indictment, 6 unnamed co-conspirators are identified. This is the latest aftershock from the 2021 riot at the U.S. Capitol. It's also the 3rd indictment filed against Trump, who is running for president again and is at the top of the GOP ticket. Trump was ordered to appear in federal court in Washington, D.C. tomorrow, where he may be asked to enter a plea. Well, core Republican voters and key lawmakers again stick by Donald Trump. While the 2024 GOP field is divided, the new charges are dividing the GOP field that is running against Trump for the 2024 nomination. It's also triggering key Republicans on Capitol Hill to rally to the former president's side. Among voters, the latest legal action appears likely to energize Trump's most ardent supporters and exacerbate national divisions as the presidential race heats up. The Washington, D.C. District Court Judge Tanya Chutkan, who has been assigned to preside over former Donald Trump's latest criminal indictment in Washington, D.C., has repeatedly spoken out in very strong terms against the efforts to overturn the election and disrupt the transfer of power. In November of 2021, Judge Chutkan forcefully rejected Trump's attempt to block the House Select Committee investigating January 6 from accessing more than 700 pages of records from his White House. This phrase, this quote by Judge Chutkan has become pretty famous now. She said, "Presidents are not kings and plaintiff is not president." She wrote this in her ruling where she rejected Trump's efforts to block those records. Judge Chutkan is a former federal public defender. She was appointed by Barack Obama and confirmed by all senators on June 4th, 2014, including Republican Senator Ted Cruz, who lashed out at her today. It's interesting to note, Senator Cruz didn't ask Judge Chutkan a single solitary question during her Senate confirmation hearings. 2 Michigan Republicans were charged over alleged voting machine tampering. The case stems from an attempt to prove the false claim that the 2020 presidential election was wrongfully called for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. A former state lawmaker and a losing candidate for state attorney general were charged with felonies involving voting machines. More charges could follow. Illegal crossings at the U.S. southern border surged last month. U.S. agents made more than 130,000 arrests along the Mexico border. Now, this is what July preliminary data shows. This number is over 30,000 more than arrests made in June. This portends potential trouble for Joe Biden's new border strategy, which has faced multiple legal challenges. But important to note that these arrest numbers are still lower than they were before Biden's new policy. People have come from all over the globe to New York, a city that is legally required to give them a place to stay. This week, New York City officials said they had run out of room. For over a year, record numbers of asylum seekers have arrived in New York from across the globe, nearly doubling the city's homeless population in one huge spasm. To date, more than 100,000 people live in shelters in New York City. DeSantis's controlled Disney World districts get rid of all of its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and they've gotten rid of all of the staff working in those programs. Last spring, DeSantis, who's running for the GOP presidential nomination, signed into law a measure that blocks public colleges from using federal or state funding on diversity programs. The popular and award-winning singer and performer Lizzo has been sued by 3 former dancers who accused the Grammy winner of sexual harassment and alleged that she and her production company created a hostile work environment. The civil lawsuit filed yesterday in a Los Angeles County Superior Court claims that Lizzo pressured the dancers to engage with nude performers at a club in Amsterdam and shamed one of them for her weight gain before firing her. And in this upcoming school year, the Houston Independent School District will eliminate librarian positions at more than 24 schools and use some of the libraries as centers for students who have been removed from their classrooms for disciplinary reasons. The changes are part of the new superintendent's plan called New Education System, an effort he says is designed to reform the district, which has been plagued by low reading levels and standardized test scores. And a fatal stabbing of a New York City's gay man is being investigated as a possible hate crime. O'Shea Sibley was dancing to music by Beyonce at a Brooklyn gas station prior to the fatal incident. You're watching and listening to Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, two of my favorite contributors are joining me. Jamarr Brown, he's the former executive director of the Texas Democratic Party, and he is a Democratic strategist. And Dr. Niambi Carter is here. She is a professor at the University of Maryland. So glad to have both of them joining me in this day, which has a lot of breaking news. And in hour two, we go deep and dig behind the headlines on some of the biggest stories of the day. Some of those stories make big headlines. Others have big impact. Today, we're talking about doctors who have joined and in some cases are leading the fight for abortion rights in all places, red states like Ohio. Doctors who previously never mixed work with politics are jumping into the abortion debate by lobbying state lawmakers, campaigning, forming political action committees, and trying to get reproductive rights protected by state laws. Now, many of these men and women, these doctors, are risking criminal and civil penalties. We're going to ask a candidate that ran for Senate in Ohio and a journalist who broke the story. I'm going to ask both of them, what is motivating this movement? Is it taking place all over the country? And what does it mean for women's reproductive freedoms and abortion rights? And more importantly, what does it mean for the upcoming elections in 2024? Make sure you stick around for hour two. But before I bring on my guests, here is what I'm thinking in real time. If you listen and watch this show every week, you know earlier this week, I said our Vice President Kamala Harris is having a moment, and some may call it a moment. And I said this before VP Harris gave her epic clapback to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' performative invitation to the VP to come to Florida to discuss Florida's outrageous new education standards regarding the so-called benefits, the skills development that Blacks gain from slavery. The VP said there is no roundtable, no lecture, no invitation that she will accept to debate an undeniable fact. And that fact is there were no, I repeat, no redeeming qualities of slavery. The vice president went on to say that last week when she was in Florida, she said, "We will not stop calling out and fighting back against extremists, so-called leaders who try to prevent our children from learning our true and full history." During her recent return to Florida, and the vice president has been there twice in the last couple of weeks, she called out those extremist attempts to legitimize and defend their continued attacks on the freedom to learn and teach America's full and true history. As the first vice president to ever deliver remarks at the African Methodist Episcopal Church's Women's Missionary Society Convention, VP Harris once again rejected the state's new education standards that would teach students that enslaved people benefited from slavery. The VP at this big convening of African Methodist Episcopal missionaries, she urged the thousands and thousands of attendees to fight back against nationwide attacks on our fundamental freedoms. And she enumerated those freedoms, including those on reproductive freedoms, the freedom to vote, and the freedom to live safe from gun violence. At this convention, she also highlighted the great work she and President Biden are doing to deliver for people across the country, from investing in small businesses and lowering the cost of insulin for seniors to removing lead pipes, addressing maternal health crisis, passing gun safety laws, and confirming judges like Judge Chutkan, who was confirmed under President Barack Obama when Joe Biden was the vice president, judges who reflect the diversity of America. This big, epic clapback and the presence that we see of our VP, her responding to GOP extremists, all of this is a part of her ongoing summer travel. She's going to big and small events all over the country, engaging with key constituencies. Later in the month, she's going to be in Chicago, or she may have already delivered this keynote address at Everytown for Gun Safety's annual conference. But I can't express enough how excited I am to see our VP out on the front lines, talking to big groups of women, men, concerned citizens, activists, folks who are sick and tired of being sick and tired of so much of the rhetoric and the infighting that we see, particularly coming from the GOP party. And rather than highlighting what the presidency is going to do for Vice President Harris or for Joe Biden in the way that Donald Trump is talking about what he will do for himself when he becomes president, if he becomes president, i.e. pardon himself and pardon those that invaded our Capitol, Biden and Harris are out talking to folks about how they have delivered on things big and small, talking about the economy, talking about the low Black unemployment rates, and talking about the diversity that they are responsible for as it relates to our federal judiciary. So again, I just want to say, keep on doing what you're doing, VP Harris. We see you. We salute you. We are so proud of you. We got your back. And we feel like with you and Joe Biden in the White House, one more again, as they would say, we're going to make some real progress in this country. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search. We are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive.
We are back, and today we are tracking breaking and trending news with expert contributors Jamarr Brown and Dr. Niambi Carter. And obviously the biggest news of yesterday, today, and tomorrow will be and is Donald Trump. I think there are three important stories today. There'll be a different story tomorrow, but today it is, again, digesting, really trying to make sense of this four-count felony indictment of Donald Trump for his efforts to try to subvert democracy and disrupt the peaceful transfer of power after he lost the 2020 presidential election. That's story number one. Number two is this, indict, rally, repeat. This is the reaction from the Republican base. Trump is indicted. He has a big rally. And then we get these same reactions from GOP leaders as well as some of his voters. And then the third big story today is everybody learning who Washington, D.C. District Court Judge Tanya Chutkan is. Many folks getting acquainted with her today for the very first time. Tomorrow, we're going to be tracking the appearance of Donald Trump in that D.C. courthouse. He won't be appearing before Judge Chutkan. He'll be appearing before, in all likelihood, a magistrate judge. But today, Professor Carter, let's talk about these three Trump stories, starting with Judge Tanya Chutkan. You are in the DMV area. Had you heard or knew anything about Judge Chutkan before? She's blown up now in the media and on social media as a result of being randomly appointed to preside over the indictment of Donald Trump in the D.C. District Court.
Not really. I mean, we heard about her a little bit with the January 6th proceedings because she's presided over some of those cases. But I would say probably before today, like many judges, I mean, they labor in obscurity. Their job is not to be celebrities. They're not, politicians. They're there to administer justice. They're appointed to those positions. They're confirmed through Senate hearings and other things. So most of the time, we don't know who these people are. And honestly, save for Donald Trump and some of his supporters making a lot of hay about this particular judge, we probably still wouldn't know much about Judge Chutkan. So, I mean, it's like, any other place. She is now going to be a much more popular judge, probably to her chagrin, than she was even 3 months ago.
Well, you're right. Most judges, no one can name them unless you're a lawyer and you're appearing before them in court on a regular basis. Most of them, like you said, their jobs are behind the scenes. The cases that come before them may make news, but unless they are sitting in some trial that is televised on television or something and they insert themselves in that trial process, typically we don't know who they are. But Jamarr, Senator Ted Cruz wants everybody to know who Judge Chutkan is because he spent the better part of his podcast today berating her, even though she was appointed by a Senate which he sat on. He was sitting on the Judiciary Committee when she was confirmed in 2014. He did send some questions to her, written questions, but he did not ask her any questions during her confirmation hearing. And then he voted to confirm her. Now, all of a sudden, she's unfit. Mm-hmm. She's super liberal. She can't be trusted to preside over this case. She's not qualified. And the attacks go on and on and on. What do you expect to see out of Judge Chutkan despite these baseless and meritless attacks by Cruz and the other parts of the Trump base?
Yeah, well, Areva, let's just be honest. I mean, these attacks are coming from someone who is presiding over a case of somebody they want to defend. They still want to defend Donald Trump. They still want to ride the wave with his voters, right? That people that are supporting him, and they think that will hold the Republican Party, which I think they'll learn in the end it won't. But to your question, right? It's absolutely, I think that the judge will be fair. I think that she has proven that she would be fair. She's had Democrats and Republicans in the Senate vote for her to be confirmed. Obviously, the judiciary process, especially in confirmation, is very tough. It's very rigorous. And when you make it through that process, they believe that you're going to be fair, that you're going to be impartial, and that you're going to execute justice from the bench. And we've seen that she's done that before. And she's done that in a way that's been fair. And I think that she will do that. The Republicans don't want more details and more information to come out because they're still trying to cover for Donald Trump, and they still want to cover for their involvement in January 6th situation.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is just startling. Is nauseating, really, is a better word, Professor Carter, because I'm thinking about Eileen Cannon. So you have this judge in Florida that's presiding over the indictment, the first federal indictment involving the mishandling of documents. Haven't heard Ted Cruz or any other Republicans go after Judge Cannon because they like her, because she has tried to rule in a way favorable to Trump when the documents case was first assigned to her. She was rejected, hand-slapped by the 11th Circuit for some of her efforts to go above and beyond to appease Donald Trump. And now you have, and I should note, Judge Cannon has no criminal trial experience, has not ever presided over a criminal trial of the magnitude in which this records case, this mishandling of records case is. Contrast that with Judge Chutkan, who was in private practice, was a public defender in D.C., one of the toughest offices in the country to even get hired by. Thousands of people apply, only a couple of people are ever hired. So some of the best lawyers in the country work at that D.C. public defender's office. 30 jury trials herself, appellate experience, has been on the court since 2014. Just check the box in terms of her credentials, her educational background, all stellar, but yet somehow she's unfit, where, Judge Eileen Cannon, who can't check many of those boxes, is the perfect judge for the case involving Donald Trump.
And I think you outlined why that is. I mean, anybody who is not a Trump appointee or some other Republican appointee, they're going to say is illegitimate, is an abuse. I mean, they seem to think that every judge that's been appointed by a Democrat is somehow a puppet of this particular regime and is acting in a way to sort of weaponize, I think that's the word they've been using, the justice system against Donald Trump, rather than the fact that this man did lots of things that other people thought were indictable offenses. I don't know if that's a word, right? But these things were clearly worthy of indictment. So I agree with Jamarr. This woman is not going to risk her professional reputation to score political points with Democrats. She has a job for life. Like, there's no upside for her to do anything against Donald Trump. And the same thing with Judge Cannon. I mean, I think Judge Cannon was selected, quite frankly, because she's so young. I think she might be in her early 40s. Again, these are lifetime appointments. She could be on this bench another 30, 40, 50 years, right, if she's healthy. And so these are not necessarily about people's credentials and what people's abilities are, right? This is about what can be your legacy. And the Trump court, the Trump legacy was building up these lower courts, in addition to the Supreme Court, to really elongate his shadow over this country beyond his presidency, because he only gets 2 terms, right? Any president only gets 2 terms, but these judges last a long time. And so Judge Cannon, it's not to besmirch her reputation. The facts are the facts. She has a much more shallow legal experience than Judge Chutkan, but she's young. She will be there for a long time, and barring anything, crazy, she's going to still be in charge of this Mar-a-Lago case.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to note Judge Cannon does come out of the Federalist Society, and the Federalist Society is an organization that was designed to start grooming law students to get them ready to sit on the federal bench, and many of them have to, vow allegiance to many of the far-right extremist positions in many cases. So Judge Cannon, although I think she is capable of being objective if she chooses to, but we should note that her background is, she does come out of the Federalist Society. She is affiliated with a group of lawyers that were handpicked by Trump and his team because, one, they were young, as you said, and they would be on the court for a lifetime, but also because they have expressed views that make it clear to Republicans like Donald Trump that they are going to make decisions in cases when there's an opportunity to do so that favor Republican ideology, principles, and values. There is no such group like that, I should tell you, on the Democratic side. In law school, there's no Federalist Society on the left that's recruiting law students and saying, to be in our group, you got to be you got to be against abortion, you got to be for affirmative action, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't happen that way. The Republicans have been much more intentional about packing the court with ideologues, and many of them, and Judge Cannon is one of them, their legal experience is scant. I sat on a committee in California where I interviewed judges for then Senator Kamala Harris, and some of the Republicans that were put up for these positions, you just would sit there and pull your hair out like, dude, you've been in court once. And you should you should be like a judge for life. Why? Tell me again. Run that by me. So again, kudos to Barack Obama for appointing a judge like Judge Chutkan that has real legal experience, chops, and acumen, and has proven an ability to, have the correct kind of temperament for this job. When we come forward, obviously more about Donald Trump, but also want to talk about our epic clapback by our VP, who is having a moment. And then my girl Lizzo has been sued. My daughter said I didn't want to talk about that. I am talking about it, Michael. I love Lizzo, but I'm going to talk about it when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a respite.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up.
Better believe it, brother.
If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black.
KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest spot. Shot with a rest spot. Shot with a rest spot.
Have you?
We are back and we are tracking today's breaking and trending news. My expert contributors are here to help us make sense of all of this news. Jamarr Brown, a former executive director of the Texas Democratic Party and Democratic strategist, is joining us, and Dr. Niambi Carter, a professor at the University of Maryland. And of course, the biggest news of today, yesterday and tomorrow is Donald Trump. He will be in a district court in Washington, D.C. for his first appearance after being indicted by special counsel Jack Smith on 4 charges, 3 conspiracy charges, 1 obstruction charge. And with the indictment, there are 6 unnamed co-conspirators yet to be charged. And special counsel Smith made it clear that the investigation is ongoing. And we saw in that Florida case, Trump was indicted, and then there was an employee who was later indicted, and then a second employee. So don't be surprised if you start to see these 6 unnamed co-conspirators. And we have learned, Jamarr, we could pretty much figure out who most of them were because of the descriptions in the indictment and publicly what we know about them. But Rudy Giuliani, he is co-conspirator number one. His lawyer has confirmed that. So you can't help but ask yourself, how is Rudy Giuliani, the quote unquote crime fighter who rose from a federal prosecutor's office to lead New York City, one of our most, our largest cities in the country, heart of our financial, all of the economics and finances in this country, at a moment of its deepest crisis, was considered, one of the best mayors ever. At one point was thought to be a shoo-in for president. How is a man like that with his reputation? How does he end up named in an indictment involving a plot to overturn a presidential election?
Well, this is what I think. I think that people are willing to sell their souls for power and access. And that's what I think happened with Rudy Giuliani. I mean, he was going to run for U.S. Senate, wasn't able to because of health reasons. He ran for president. Obviously did not become the Republican nominee for many other political and health reasons, right? And then when someone like Donald Trump comes along and people see the wave that they can ride, they decide that they ride the wave. But the thing that you have to look at with the Republican corruption is these are all choices that these folks made, right? That they thought that Donald Trump was going to be ascended to the highest office in the land. They were willing to do anything that he told them and asked them to do, even if it put their own personal lives and professional reputations at stake. That's how you get a Rudy Giuliani, who was pretty well known and was mayor during 9/11 and other things. And then the other piece to your question about crime is the Republicans use crime as a wedge against Democrats. They don't talk about crime and the issues that they're involved in around crime and criminal investigations, also as well. And so I think those two reasons you see how we got to a place with Rudy Giuliani. They think that Donald Trump is their key to power, and they've latched onto him, and they've decided, I'm willing to risk it all to gain power federally and internationally.
Yeah, they don't see crime when it involves a Republican. All of the majority, at least those that have some points on the board, running for president on the GOP side have either avoided talking about the indictment, feigning that they had not read it, or like the Kevin McCarthy's of the world and those in Congress have been openly attacking Hunter Biden as if they're making an apples to apples comparison when there are no apples to apples comparisons when you're talking about trying to overthrow legitimate elections, subvert democracy, defrauding voters, denying voters an opportunity to have their votes counted, and Hunter Biden not paying his taxes. I mean, they're not even like in the same ballpark, on the same field, in the same city, in the same state, but yet Republicans want to try to deflect from the criminal charges against Donald Trump. And Professor Carter, his lawyer, Trump's lawyer, is on television. I mean, he's not hiding. He's been on every morning show. He's been on every daytime show saying that Trump had a First Amendment right, that there's no to say what he said and do what he did, and that there's no way that this prosecutor is going to be able to prove that Trump did not believe that he had the right to investigate this irregularity in these voting machines, these voting apparatuses. He says there's an opinion by one of the nation's leading legal scholars, and that's Attorney Eastman he's making reference to, that told him there was fraud in this election, and as the president at that time, he had every right to pursue every effort, including filing actions in courts, calling state legislators. So they've got a whole defense already, a plug-and-play defense, First Amendment rights, plausible deniability, that he truly, truly believed there was fraud, and he was just doing his civic duty to investigate fraud.
Well, listen, he had a right to appeal, certainly, if he thought that there was something wrong that happened. But that's not what he did. What you do is you let the state secretary figure this out, because that's actually their job, right? They are the people who manage elections. What you don't do is call Ben Raffensperger, Georgia, and say, can you find me X number of votes? What you don't do is start working on a legal strategy months before right, before any vote had been counted, and start having people like Attorney Eastman, at least allegedly, working on a strategy for if you don't actually win the election. What you don't do is start having people like Rudy Giuliani go in the press and malign Black women who were just doing their civic duty as elections workers, and now holding them out as some part of a cabal to put in Joe Biden. All of that, he could say anything he wanted, but we all know that doesn't mean you are free from the consequences. If I say, something, disparaging about you, I have a right to say it, but that doesn't mean that I am free of the consequences of saying it. Just like if I believe that you are a lizard person and I punch you in the face because I think you're a lizard person, doesn't mean I didn't just commit assault. So all of these things about what he had a right to do, none of this absolves him of the consequences of what he did, because he sat there on January 6th and he told those people to fight like hell. He did instruct Mike Pence and others not to do what they were there to do on the day of January 6th, which is the peaceful transfer of power and certifying these election results. So all of this, kind of talk, we can say, well, he really believed. He didn't believe it, because if he believed that he actually won, then what was all of the arraying of these people in advance? It's like he had an advanced crisis team, right? Waiting. And Attorney Eastman, maybe he is, to some people, considered a leading expert in law, but he also had a responsibility as an attorney, as did Rudy Giuliani, who's also an attorney, right, by training, to tell the president what the limits were responsibly for what he discovered, and that's not what they did here.
Yeah, just to be real clear, and the indictment says it, Donald Trump has the First Amendment right to tell any lie he chooses to tell, but the actions you just described are not the telling of a lie that is protected by the First Amendment. And yes, Eastman may have given him a memo that says you have a right to do X, but every lawyer in that White House, Pat Cipollone, Justice Department lawyers, judges around the country, other key advisors were they all were telling Trump, there is no fraud. You have lost this election. So you don't get to cherry pick one, ridiculous opinion that goes against the grain of all the evidence that's out there and say, well, I just relied on that and somehow I can pretend like I didn't know any of this other evidence that was mounting. So good luck with that argument in the courtroom of Justice Chuckin before a jury of your peers in Washington, D.C. That's all I have to say about that, Donald Trump. Lizzo, oh my God, one of my favorite performers. I love her to death. And my daughter sent me the article of her being sued. And I didn't respond right away. And then my daughter's like, okay, Mom, you don't have anything to say about your girl? So yes, I do. And when we come forward, I want to talk about these allegations, because they're serious allegations against Lizzo and the African-American former Urban League president in Florida, who is responsible for the elimination of the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and staff associated with the Disney World District. What's up with that? When we come forward, KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm young, gifted, and black. KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
Let's off the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 15.
All right, Professor Carter, Lizzo, Grammy Award winning Lizzo, who has been repping for big girls, who has been out front talking about body positivity, who is loved and beloved by fans all over the world, has now been accused of sexual harassment and creating a hostile work environment. What do you think of this story?
I mean, you know, it's heartbreaking, right? One, because you're rooting for Lizzo, but also the women that work with her. And so I'm just, you know, reserving judgment like anybody else. I think I was aghast at the allegations because they're pretty serious and just beyond the pale of what is considered. I mean, this is beyond inappropriate, right? If true. So I think like anyone else, I'm just sort of like, I'm hurting for everyone involved. It's horrifying.
Yeah, what I thought when I saw the case, and like you, I love Lizzo. I think she's an incredible role model. But I do think Lizzo and a lot of artists today push the limits, right? In this culture of be your authentic self, be free, express yourself. No matter what size, no matter what gender, you know, everybody just kind of gets to show up who they are. And we know if you follow Lizzo on her social media page, that means a lot of nudity. She's often nude herself. She often takes, I see you shaking your head, Jamarr. She's often photographed nude and does photo shoots with her crew where they are all nude. So I just wonder if this case is really going to be, you know, obviously about the claims of these folks who say they were victimized, but also about how far do you get to go in this culture of kind of everything goes, self-expression, you know, be your authentic self. What are you thinking, Jamarr? You're shaking your head there.
Well, you know, just like y'all, I mean, I follow Lizzo, and as so many folks do, and Lizzo has really pushed the barriers and really opened the doors for us to have real conversations in our community about body size and body positivity, right? About just relationships and everything, right? And so, but I think that sometimes what you see in this case and what might happen is that you have to separate what is culture and how are we demonstrating our entertainment versus what happens behind the scenes. And I think that you're starting to see a little bit of that difference, you know, here, where some of these folks are saying, fine, this is what her brand is, but this is what my experience is. And how does that parlay? And what does that mean when we go into a court and we have to start seeing the details, right, of some of this, right? We have to remember these are accusations at this point.
Right.
It's still a process that's at play. And then what happens if there's not a full trial or a full case, but they end up in a settlement? And that could be the goal, right? And so we don't know all of those things. And so I think that that's going to be a real question for our communities to say, in our entertainment, this is what we like and what we accept and what we're willing to have conversations about. But then people who show up to work, who have to help her drive that brand, what is their experience and how do we still respect them in the midst of this? And I think that's the interesting part.
Said like a true employment lawyer, which I know you are not, but I am.
I'm not.
And you're right. The part here that may get lost is the employment part.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
keep talking.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing that we have to remember, because even though it's entertainment and those lines can get a little blurry, right? This is your crew, these are your dancers, but they are employees. You give these people money in exchange for their services. And I mean, it's also why, some people probably do draw a very bright line between work time and playtime, because when we're on stage and it looks like we're fun and we're just, hanging out and having a good time and dancing and vibing and all that good stuff. But in real life, we don't do that because we don't want these kind of lines crossed. So what I do with my friends and the kind of fun that we may have is not going to be the same thing with an employee, because we do recognize there's a power difference, right? That I do employ you. And if I decide to fire you, that's it. And so what if, I take you to a venue and you don't want to partake and you do so either under duress or because of fear? Like, let's just avoid all of that and keep work time, and playtime, with those people who do not, take money from you in exchange for their dancing.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because there is a difference in your workplace. I want to talk about Clinton Gilzine. What do you all know about him? He's African American. He's the former head of the Central Florida Urban League, and he just called DEI initiatives illegal and simply un-American. What do you know about Clinton, Jamarr?
Well, I don't know a lot about him personally, but what I will say about the statement is, all skin folk sometimes they ain't kinfolk, and sometimes you ought to show a sign. And so, at the end of the day, especially somewhere like the Urban League, which has fought to ensure diversity in corporations, in schools, and other academic institutions, in other community institutions, for someone who was the head of that to say that we don't need these programs when the very core of the organization is to fight for those programs, right? And not only in Florida, but all across the country, especially when the Urban League just had a national conference and where they did advocacy trainings and other types of trainings and panels to really discuss how we can expand this work across the country to ensure that there's fairness and opportunity. It's really a conundrum to me. And so I think that, everybody they look like us, but we want them to show a sign. And I think that's very disappointing.
I just went to Clinton's Twitter page to learn more about him myself. And it still has on here. He's the CEO of the Central Florida Urban League. And then the next thing I see is a post with him honored to speak at Ron DeSantis' press conference, talking about a particular bill. He has a lot of posts about Ron DeSantis. So I'm wondering, Dr. Carter, how he became the president of an Urban League chapter, because it seems like what he believes in, what he stands for, is antithetical to the values and principles of the Urban League.
Well, certainly. I mean, I don't know if he's had some sort of change of heart or change of values. I don't think that if the Urban League probably knew that this is how he felt, that he would probably be selected as their leader, because given the things that he believes, they're going to be out of work, right? There will be nothing for the Urban League to do. I mean, my guess is that, he moved in a more right direction. And I'm not suggesting that this is the only thing that could be at play, but, you'll never be out of work as a Black person who is willing to say these kinds of things. And service other kinds of agendas politically and otherwise. So I don't know, and I'm not suggesting that anything has happened between this man and Ron DeSantis in terms of of currying favor, but certainly I think Ron DeSantis has a Black people problem right now. And this gentleman may be the person who is going to, I don't know, provide some cover for the DeSantis regime and hopefully burnish his credibility, which has been burned with Black people in the state of Florida for numerous and sundry reasons. The slavery curriculum is just the latest of many.
But you know what, Dr. Carter, the two folks from that education committee that have been speaking out, supporting and standing by those new standards are two African Americans.
Yes.
So you have those African Americans on DeSantis' education committee saying we're proud to say that slavery was a form of Job Corps. And now you have Glinton, who is saying, you know, that it's un-American to have diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and he's glad that they've been eliminated. So Ron DeSantis has managed to find three, what appears to be on paper, highly educated Black folks that are doing his bidding.
Hey, you never go out of work that way. And look, people are free to be wrong too, right? I mean, like, people can be wrong. Like you said, the slavery is a job training program. When most enslaved people died by 22, highly doubtful, right? But you know, listen, everybody is not going to be in lockstep. And to Jamarr's point, everybody who is Black will not see the world the same. I do think, however, even where we have disagreements, we have to be aware of the damage we do and who is using our words, who's taking our labor and what they're using them for. And those ends might not be the same ones that we have. So even if you're getting the warm and fuzzies from a particular individual or a particular administration, I mean, regardless of ideology, those people might not be there to serve the same interests you are.
Yeah, and we did see Black Republicans come out and push back against these education standards. Even Tim Scott, senator from South Carolina, spoke out against them. So you're right. We are not a monolith, and Black folks come in all shades, and we come in all, you know, we have all kinds of different opinions, and we don't have to all agree. But I do think, you know, we do have an obligation to at least not do things that are going to harm folks in our community to the extent that we believe that our work is harmful. And I think the work being done by this Florida, you know, so many of the things that are being done in Florida right now are absolutely harmful. And I think we should call folks out, Ron DeSantis and these three African-American leaders that he has put in place. They should be called out as well, because what they are doing around the slavery standards or standards of education teaching slavery is just downright reprehensible, as our vice president has said. We are out of time. Thank you so much, Jamarr. Thank you so much, Dr. Carter. Always a pleasure to see both of you. Always a lot smarter when you were here. And thank you for helping me out doing my little coughing spell. I don't know what happened. I'm not eating or drinking anything, but I appreciate both of you. When we come forward, we're going to talk about these doctors in red states who are on the front lines trying to push back on these oppressive laws regarding abortion rights. What risks are they taking, and how impactful can they be? Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And